Hey y'all, Anna Rummer here, Associate Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs Operations. And if I'm not there with you in person, it means that I am at the Chancellor's Leadership Institute, where we're being challenged as leaders to better lead here at the college as well. So, really excited to still get the message across to you, even though it's by recording. I trust that y'all are going to have some awesome conversations throughout this presentation. And I'm sorry that I missed out on getting to present to you in person. However, if you see me out and about, this is a topic that I nerd out on and I never get tired of talking about. So if this is something that piques your interest and you want to talk more about, and you see me out and about, like by all means, pull me aside. Let's have a conversation. So I love that opening quote from Harvard Business Review because let's face it, like change is going to keep happening. It's been happening. It's going to continue happening at a quick rate, and not just here at the college, but within the world, right? And so our teams are really looking at us as leaders, to provide that sense of stability and understanding throughout the sea of change. So let's start off with this presentation. I'm going to sing this along with you. You can sing along with me, but changes. A lot has happened since October 2nd of 2023. And I'm going to ask the room. I'm not going to be able to hear you, but I'm going to ask anyway. Who remembers what happened on October 2nd, 2023? Russell happened on October 2nd, 2023. That was his first day here at Austin Community College. And since coming on board, a lot has changed. So I want to take some time to name some of those cultural changes that are taking place here at ACC. Number one, we have some language. Believe y'all have seen this slide already, but we have some language that we can rally around and that we have a shared understanding of what our ultimate goal is. It's that North Star goal. It's that 70 by 30. We've had conversations around how will we get there? Right? So we have our theory of change and these four buckets or pillars or groupings of work with starting strong, enrolling full time, meeting basic needs, and having that culture of belonging and connection. Our students have informed values that we need to live by. Right? So those guiding values throughout all this work being courage and compassion and joy and yes. And I'm so excited for y'all to learn more about what does that mean for you as student affairs employees. And with that, what are the associated competencies? What do we need to know how to do to successfully serve our students? So, that leadership fortitude and integrity and trust, approachability and kindness, motivating self, motivating others, serving and celebrating others, being action-oriented, problem-solving, and last but certainly not least, how are each of you uniquely talented to do this work? And how are we collectively talented to do this work? So those are some changes that I wanted to name, some new language that has really taken shape since October 2nd of last year. Another thing that has changed quite a bit is what we're calling flat organization communication. So you've heard Russell talk about flat organizations and the hierarchy and bureaucracy of things. And I think that there are times where we definitely felt that, right? Like the messages weren't getting down, they weren't getting across, and now they're coming out, right? Like we can set our watch to it. We know that, on a monthly basis, we're going to be hearing in a town hall, we're going to be rumor busting, right? Perhaps you're even hosting follow-up sessions after those calls to talk about what that means for you and your team. That's a practice that we have in student affairs operations. Right after the town hall call, we hop onto a call together as a team to really talk about well, what does that mean for us? Oftentimes, me as a leader, just like many of you, is the first time that I'm hearing the information as well, right? And that's what that flat organization communication is. We're all hearing the same thing at the same time. And so it's really direct. Some of the advantages also is like that speedy flow of information. You don't have to wait for it to trickle down through all of the different layers. It can also result in enhanced collaboration, communication, right? We're all hearing the same thing at the same time, and we have that access to leadership, right? Our employees really have easier access to senior leaders for direct input and that sense of inclusion. That being something that many employees have been frustrated about for a long time, and Russell heard them loud and clear, and has been looking to utilize flat organization communication to help remedy that. With that, there's some disadvantages to it as well. Sometimes there's some information overload without clear prioritization. Sometimes our employees may struggle with an overload of information that affects their productivity. Sometimes there's some lack of formal channels, right? So our employees, might have heard something and then they're coming to us with things that they heard before we've even heard it. And sometimes with that, there can be potential for miscommunication. So, like without those clear roles and responsibilities, sometimes some people might feel out of the loop, and that can create an us versus them environment if we allow it to go unchecked. Right. So I guess my question to you, and to be a little bit introspective about that, or perhaps journal about this in your journal, have some conversations during a break, is how's that feeling for you? Like, how's that showing up, the flat organization communication? What are you loving? I mean, there's a lot to love about it, but like, what's causing some consternation? What's causing some frustration? Nice versus kind. What's the difference? I think a lot of times when people hear these words, they're viewed synonymously, but they're not. They're similar, but there's some really clear differences. So, if I were in the room with you, I'd go around and say, "How would you define the difference between being nice and being kind?" But because I don't get to hear your lovely answers, I'm going to skip to the answer myself. Nice is polite. It's agreeable. It's surface level friendliness. It's maintaining appearances. And oftentimes it's saving face and doing all of the above to avoid conflict, right? Kindness is really characterized by empathy, compassion, genuine care or concern for others' well being. And it takes meaningful action to support and uplift others. Okay. So I would like for you to think of an example where someone was nice, but not necessarily kind. And how did that sit with you? The last time I gave this presentation, I had a great example from the audience. And one of the things that they mentioned was that they showed up to work with their shirt inside out and backwards. And so the whole time that they were talking to a coworker, that coworker kept looking down at their tag. Their shirt tag was poking out, and that individual kept looking at their tag, looking at their tag. And that person was like, "What are they looking at?" And after that individual walked away, they looked down and they realized my shirt is inside out, backwards. They noticed it, said nothing. So that was an example of, I think they were trying to be nice because they didn't want to hurt my feelings and alert me that my shirt was inside out and backwards. But the kind thing to do would have been letting me know so that I could fix it and do better. Right. And so my question for you is, how many folks are we allowing to walk around the college with their shirt inside out and backwards? And that's really the difference between niceness and kindness. I would posit that before our new chancellor, Dr. Lowry Hart, came to our college, we were really operating in a niceness model. And I think it's something that we're still growing out of. However, I think he's calling us to kindness. So let's talk about what kindness can look like in the workplace. So when it comes to giving feedback, for example, being nice is avoiding honest feedback to spare feelings. Being kind is providing constructive feedback with empathy. When I say constructive feedback with empathy, what I mean is the feedback should be building that person up right? Not the, well, I'm just being honest sort of cop out whenever we start with meanness. Kindness clearly isn't meanness, but that's what I mean by providing constructive feedback with empathy. When you avoid that honest feedback to spare feelings, to be nice, we allow folks to walk around with their shirts inside out and backwards, right? Um, One that I like to call out as you review the slide and you're kind of seeing the difference between nice and kind is time management. And that's the one that I'm still challenging. I'm still challenged with, right? Being nice is consistently saying yes at the expense of balance. Being kind is setting boundaries while considering others' needs. So having some real talk conversation around priorities and talking about where individuals fall and those priorities. So definitely invite you to explore this list a little bit more. Another call out that I would like to consider is like, what is our focus? So if you'll recall, we did a lot of listening sessions using fearless culture methodology. You'll remember the stinky fish, right? But one of the things that they also talked about is where is our focus, right? Where are our priorities as a college? Are we prioritizing internal or external? Are we prioritizing adaptive or predictable, right? And so just to talk through that a little bit, internal is really characterized by strong interpersonal relationships, coordination, process, politics, but sometimes that orientation is really towards the past or the way that we've always done things, right? External focuses more on market dynamics, exploring the latest technology, anticipating future customer needs. And there's really this external focus that translates into future orientation. So, what's possible? What are the new opportunities or solutions that we could be looking at? Then we have predictable or adaptive. And so predictability really prioritizes organizing for stability. These cultures really appreciate structure and planning and goal setting. And the mindset is shaped by this desire to predict and manage and control reality. Whereas adaptive is more focused on this belief that reality can't be controlled. So you have to continuously adapt and change. It's possessing this agile and flexible approach, and speed and adaptation are more important than structure, processes, and plans. So when you put it in a 4-box matrix with adaptive at the top, predictable at the bottom, internal on the left, and external on the right, you end up with what the Fearless Culture methodology really calls their culture identity assessment tool, right? And it talks about some key characteristics of each culture and they've named them. So if there's an internal focus with an adaptive focus, we're really looking at a tribal culture. The leadership style is affiliative, it's a coaching style, leadership style. And the mindset is really geared around participation, affiliation. Do you fit in? All right. Behaviors are social and they're people oriented and democratic and culture centric. Are you a cultural fit? Right. And so that's what that tribal culture is all about. When we look at a fearful culture, the leadership style is it's organized, it's commanding, it's really that mindset of command and control. And the behaviors can look bureaucratic or process oriented, efficient, and authority centric. Right. When we look at both predictable and external together, it can be an aggressive mindset or an aggressive culture where the leadership style is strategic, it's pace setting. The mindset is challenging, it's competitive, and the behaviors are really business-like. They're goal-oriented, they're high-performing and results-centric. Okay. And last but certainly not least, we have fearless culture up in the top right corner. That's both adaptive with an external scenario and transformational. The mindset is one of experimentation and innovation. And the behaviors are really geared around being entrepreneurial or innovative, risk taking, and idea centric. I think the key thing to keep in mind, oops, sorry about that. I think the key thing to keep in mind is that there's nothing wrong with any of these cultures. They're just different, right? Because any of them taken to the extreme, um, on the tribal side, you can be social and collaborative and democratic and cohesive. But when taken to the extreme, you're closed or too nice or biased or slow or mired in groupthink and conflict avoidance, right? When you look at the fearless culture, it can be visionary and idea oriented and risk taking and consultative. But on the extreme side, it can be vague and chaotic, and roles are unclear. And there's this continuous ideation, and it can feel unpredictable, right? And when I say that there's really no wrong culture, if you look at it, here's some of industry leaders and where they're falling. Southwest and IKEA are beloved companies. And when you look at Netflix and Amazon, I mean, when was the last time that you haven't purchased something from Amazon or streamed something on Netflix, right? Pixar and Apple are known for their innovation and, pushing the envelope. And I think many of us don't really want Bank of America or our pharmaceutical companies to be adaptive and loosey-goosey, right? Like we're hoping that they'll be predictable, okay? So it's not so much that there's anything wrong. It's just what is the right culture for us to best serve our customers, our students, right? What culture best serves us as we serve them, right? And so those are the type of questions to ask. So with that, before I ask you this question, I'm going to go back a couple of slides to this one and ask you, and Emily, if you can pause for a moment to allow folks to answer this particular question before I get going again. Which culture do you think that our chancellor is leading us towards? So if you want to now, Emily, go ahead and pause the video and you all discuss that amongst yourselves. Okay, and we're back. Hopefully you had enough time to pause. But we are back. And the answer is from Russell's mouth himself. He is leading us towards a fearless culture. He's wanting us to be more adaptive and externally focused. So if it's feeling visionary and idea oriented and experimental and like we're co-creating together, awesome. And if it's feeling a little vague and chaotic and unclear with continuous ideation and it's feeling a little unpredictable, yep, that's gonna be what it is, right? And we can work toward that extreme becoming less extreme, but understanding that those key characteristics are always going to exist, or he's going to be working toward getting us to a place where they exist. Okay, so I'm going to read this slide to you and imagine that I'm one of you there in the room. Thank you for this great presentation on ACC culture, Anna, but I thought you were supposed to be presenting on change management. Why are we talking about ACC culture? And that is because culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, so Peter Drucker, is quoted as saying this. He's the father of modern management. And it's absolutely true, right? We could have the best laid plans, but if we don't have the culture to sustain it, thanks for your time. Appreciate all your designing. But it's just not going to happen. So the more and more that I've been thinking about this and the role that change management plays, it's almost like we need a theory of change for the theory of change. Not really. I promise that's not what I'm doing. But sort of, right? Like that's where the change management component comes in. So let's talk about that a little bit. What is change management? It's really guiding people through organizational changes to ensure a smooth transition and successful adoption of a new way of working. And if we thought of like the different pillars, and if we actually did a theory of change for the theory of change, which we're not, but humor me, some of those buckets or pillars underneath would look like these bullets, right? How are we building awareness for the need? How are we creating a shared vision? How are we empowering and involving employees? How are we providing training and resources for that change? And how are we celebrating those short-term achievements, right? So there are a lot of different frameworks for change management. And during the theory of change process, we're going to be adopting an agnostic framework for the theory of change management process. If you don't know, there are going to be different development teams during the theory of change, and they're going to be supporting our design teams. One of those development teams will be a change management team. I get the pleasure and the privilege and the excitement of getting to lead that particular team. And so with that, we'll be taking an agnostic approach, but I kind of want to share with you some of the different frameworks, but we're going to focus heavily on one. So there's Kotter's 8-step process that really focuses on that big opportunity. You see things here like creating a sense of urgency, building a guiding coalition, forming a strategic vision, enlisting this volunteer army. And if you haven't noticed, Russell is essentially teaching us a masterclass in change management, right? Coming on board and challenging us with all of this change and how he's really been working with us for buy-in and creating that awareness and desire of why it is that we need to change. I love this particular model. This one's called the McKinsey model. Yes, it looks complicated, and that's because change is complicated, right? At the center of all of it, we have our shared values. At the top, we have our hard S's, which are around strategy and structure and systems. And on the bottom, we have our soft S's, which are around skills and staff and style. And I think the key point of the model essentially is that all 7 areas are just intrinsically interconnected. And if you change one in an area, it requires change in the rest of the organization for it to function effectively. So think about whenever we've had a change in systems or a change in strategy, and we didn't have a change in skills, or we didn't have a change in staff or structure. How successful was that change? So I think just really recognizing how interconnected all of these things are when it comes to change. One model that we're going to pay quite a bit of attention to today is the ProSci methodology of change, the ProSci ADKAR model. And at the center of this swirl, you'll see an individual with the letters ADKAR. We're going to break down what that means. So ADKAR really focuses on the awareness or the need for change, the desire to participate and support the change, the knowledge on how to change, so actually providing that training, and then also the ability to implement those required skills and behaviors. So once they've received that training, are they actually doing the things? Like, are they able to do the things that you're asking them to change? And then reinforcement to sustain the change. So once they're knowledgeable and able, are they keeping up with it, or are they slipping back into their old ways of doing? And so that reinforcement can be both positive, right, and celebrating those early adopters, or it can come, in the form of accountability and having conversations around what's keeping you from sustaining the change, right? So I want to explore some fundamentals around change management. So this is a really busy slide. I promise I'll do my best to make it simple for you. But when it comes to change and success, because that's the whole point of us doing change, right? Is for us to be successful. There's a technical side, and then there's a people side. So the technical side doesn't just mean like the technological side. It means like the thing that you're building, the thing that you're designing. Is it a new process? Is it a new program? Is it a new service? Like, what is the thing that you're designing, developing, and delivering? Right? And so that side is usually executed by the project management discipline, or those of us who are just asked to create a thing, and we do our best job at project management without being project managers, right? But that's the technical side of change. And how often have you seen change that's been created here at the college where things have been designed, developed, delivered, and then people never really engage, adopt, or use it? Since I've been here, I've seen it happen, right? And that's really the people side of change. And that's executed by the change management discipline. So it's really, not just focusing on designing, developing, and delivering it. It's also then focusing on how do we encourage individuals and guide them to engage, adopt, and use. And you need both working together for success. So the achievements of an organization are really the results of the combined effort of each individual. And so by that, I mean organizations, they're made up of individuals, right? So change really does happen at that individual level. If we're moving from a current state and we're transitioning to a future state, instead of looking at it as these like behemoth changes as ACC as a whole, what it really is individuals. And as you transition through that change from current state to future state, you'll notice that some individuals fell off, right? Maybe they quit. Maybe they retired. Maybe they're being objectors and they're not engaging with the change. But if you don't employ change management, you'll see that it can be with change management, it's a little bit more cleaner. You're going to, equate to that success. It's clear, it's defined, right? But without any change management whatsoever, look at that transition state. It's extended. It's rocky at best. There's a lot of ups and downs happening there in that transition state. And then when you get to the future state, it's full of holes. It's not fulfilled. You did not reach success, right? And we call that Swiss cheese outcome. Your desired future state's full of holes without everyone adopting and using and engaging in the change. And so the consequences of that Swiss cheese future state is really creating this history of failed changes here at the college. It's not delivering on the return on investment that our community, our students, is hoping for. That it's an unachieved improvement. So, AKA a waste of everyone's time, right? Because we're not changing just for the change. We're not just changing for the sake of change. We're changing because we want to be successful, right? And so then we end up with this future state that's not what we expected and not what we hoped for. And so that really is the value of change management. So organizational change requires individual change. So let's break this down a little bit more as we help individuals through ADKAR. So the secret to successful change lies beyond the visible and busy activities that surround change. Successful change at its core is rooted in something much simpler: how to facilitate change with one person. And I think you're probably catching on to why we're talking to you as supervisors, right? And we're going to talk a lot about your role in that. When we talk about the 5 elements of successful change, change begins with understanding why. Why are we changing? And so it's building that awareness. What is the nature of the change? Why is the change needed? And this is my favorite question when it comes to awareness. What is the risk of not changing? When we talk about building desire for change, change involves personal decisions. Like you have to want to, right? And so when you think about building desire for change, it's answering questions like, what's in it for me? The WIFM, right? It's understanding that it is a personal choice and that people are going to arrive to that decision in different ways and in different times. And it's also a decision for them to engage and participate. And so, if you can't get past the desire for change, it's going to be really hard for them to learn and do it and then reinforce it, right? And I think that we've all seen those folks who have objected to change and not embraced it, not desired it. And some of y'all might be thinking, like, sometimes it's hard to find the WIFM or the what's in it for me, right? And so one of the other acronyms not listed here that I like to call out is the WORM, and that what is required of me. So if you can't find a what's in it for me, even being able to provide clarity around what is required of me can really help build that desire for change. With knowledge, change requires knowing how, understanding how to change, training on new processes and tools, and learning new skills. And what I love to call out about knowledge and ADKAR is I don't know how many times y'all have had this happen before, but as a change is getting rolled out and employees are not adopting it, like we'll inherently hear like they just need more training. Like, if we just trained them better or if we just offered more training, like they would do it. And what I will tell you is false, right? If you have not built awareness and desire, if people don't understand what the change is, why we're changing, what's in it for them, that they've made the personal choice to do it, you can throw all the training in the world at them. It's not going to help, right? Um, After they've gotten the training, we're really going to focus in on that ability. So change requires action in the right direction. And it's that demonstrated capability to implement the change. Like, are they able? It's achievement of the desired change in performance or behavior. And the example that I love to give is whenever we think about our advisors and when Inside Track came to really talk with them about how they were offering the coaching model and their advising sessions. Not only did they build awareness and desire and knowledge or training around the change, but they also focused on ability, right? And they have this whole quality assurance model that's built around making sure that our advisors know how and are able to provide that coaching methodology whenever interacting with our students, right? And with that, it was still like the reinforcement piece. So that positive reinforcement, they were letting them know when they did well, what they could have done better, because change must be reinforced to be sustained. So actions that increase the likelihood that change will be continued, right? What do those actions look like? And it can come in the form of recognition and rewards that sustain the change. But it can also come in the form of having those real talk conversations, those kind, constructive conversations with empathy in mind, right? So, why is this important for you to know as a leader? All right, so let's talk about that a little bit. People managers are actually the preferred sender with changes that personally impact the employee. So they want to hear about organization wide messages from folks like Russell or Shasta. And whenever those large messages come out, they're like, that's great. Thanks so much. What does that mean for me? Right? And so they are really looking at employee supervisors as the preferred senders or communicators or meeting leaders, right, around those particular messages. So you play an incredible role whenever it comes to change management. Being an effective communicator, you might worry like, well, they've already heard it. Like, they've literally already heard this. Like, they don't need to hear it from me. Or they heard it from Russell, and then my ABC came and held a town hall, and then they heard it from them, and then my dean talked about it. They really don't need to hear about it from me. They do. They do. Employees need to hear the message sometimes 5 to 7 times before they actually internalize it. Um, And so they really want to hear the business issues and the need for change. But then they're also battling like, what are the personal implications of this change and the risk for me? And so that's what they're really counting on us as leaders to help unpack. And let's be honest, sometimes we don't know, especially whenever it comes to flat org communication, but it's us having that leadership fortitude really to um, let them know we're going to work through this together. And as I find out, you'll find out. As you hear things, let's talk about it, right? And it's really having those types of leadership conversations. Some of those important messages for employees that you need to be mindful of as a manager, the things that they're really going to care about the most, these are going to be familiar. Nothing is going to be shocking here, but they want to know what's in it for me. They really want you to hammer home the business reasons for the change. They want to know how the change is happening or the impact on them as individuals or details about the change, right? And sometimes those things are unfolding, but sharing with them these things are unfolding. As I learn more, I'm going to share with you, right? But it's also having that insatiable curiosity. It's checking back on the Theory of Change website and seeing what's going on within our organization so that you can ask, smarter questions. So you can say, hey, I noticed this and this. Like, how might that change things for us, right? It's being an active participant in the change so that you can best lead your teams through the change as well. And I also want to acknowledge that you're a person. You're going through change as well. I will be honest, like a lot of the change that we've been going through with the Theory of Change, while it's exciting and fascinating and interesting to me, like I went through my own feelings of, okay, well, what's my role in this? And what does this mean for me? And like, how do I lead my teams through this? And part of that is you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help others, right? And so that's what I love about this particular slide. You need to prepare yourself for change before you can lead your teams through change. And so understanding changes that are underway for you in your role, it's adapting to the change that is happening to you. It's developing the competencies for managing change. And so that's what this training is all about, right? We'll talk a little bit too. It's like, how are you uniquely talented to lead your teams through change? So looking back at those Clifton strengths, right? When it comes to leading your team through change, it's introducing change to your employees. Have y'all actually had conversations about the theory of change with your teams? Have you asked questions or asked what they're curious about? So those are ways to open up and talk about it. Managing employees through transition, and then also reinforcing and celebrating successes. When it comes to preparing yourself for change and some of these different steps, what is understanding the changes underway and what your role is in that? And part of that is identifying the changes that are impacting your group, identifying how the change will impact your team, understanding why these changes are being made, understanding your role, right? Further, when adapting to the change that is happening to you, you need to identify your own areas of resistance. Like what's making you feel resistant to that change? You need to discuss your objectives or concerns and make that personal choice to support and participate in the change, right? You can't build desire in your team if you're not desiring it yourself. So this is a lot of that pre-work. So we're going to take 5 minutes and I have a few questions that I want you to really consider. What are your own areas of resistance as it comes to the changes that I named at the beginning of this session? What are your own areas of resistance when it comes to the theory of change, like the cultural changes that are happening, flat org communication? Excuse me. Who can you discuss your objectives or concerns with? I want you to jot down a name or two there. What do you need to feel comfortable in supporting the changes that are happening? And then last but not least, what's your barrier to change? Are you feeling stuck in awareness? Are you feeling stuck in desire? Where are you at? So we're going to take 5 minutes. So go ahead and pause here if you can, and we'll be back after you've had those 5 minutes. Okay, so we are back. Hopefully, that was some good self reflection. And I want to get into another topic here. When we think about our people managers, and each of you in this room are people managers, and what your role is during change, I also want to call out and identify that this is in addition to your day to day managerial duties, right? Like people managers have these other 5 critical roles that we're asking them to perform whenever it comes to large scale change in their areas. We're asking them to be communicators, we're asking them to be liaisons, we're asking them to be advocates, we're asking them to help us manage resistance and to be coaches. And so each of these roles for them as people managers, the cool thing is they kind of line up with the different ADKAR initials. So when we think about awareness and our managers being communicators, they're really answering why now, what if, what is my impact, how's this going to affect me, right? Like they're helping build that sense of awareness. When we think about our people managers as advocates or resistance managers, they're really focusing on that desire piece. They really want to demonstrate that commitment to the individuals, but work with those individuals to demonstrate commitment to the change. Right. As resistance managers, they're really looking at what are the root causes of the resistance? Like, why are people just opposed to the change that is being proposed or that's being rolled out, right? And so being able to identify and address those root causes can help us build desire for the change. Um, when it comes to knowledge and ability, they're really operating in that coaching mindset, right? They're really supporting the know-how, supporting that training component, and then supporting the execution, like actually implementing the change, like rolling it out. And then whenever it comes to reinforcement, they're serving as a liaison. They're letting leadership know the results and the feedback. Like, is this working? What should we celebrate? What do we need help with? How do we best sustain this? Right. And so that is in a very quick nutshell. And there could be future trainings on this specifically. I could do a whole training on resistance management, right? And the 10 steps to alleviate that. But I just wanted to give you all a quick overview in what those roles are and your role in change management. So, with your Clifton strengths in mind, I want you to look at those 5 roles and really think about which role do you feel uniquely talented to thrive in? So, when it comes to your Clifton strengths, do you feel better equipped to be a strong communicator, a strong liaison, an advocate, a resistance manager, a coach? I want you to reflect on that question. How do you feel uniquely talented? What using your Clifton strengths, which of those feels like I have that one? I'm going to be good there. All right. So let's review. I've given you a ton of information. What do I want you to remember? Number 1, change isn't going anywhere. Okay. And it will continue to happen at a fast rate. It is what it is. So just naming that. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, so we could create all these amazing changes and things, but if we do not have the culture to sustain that strategic change, like it's all for naught, right? So what role do we play in making sure that we have the culture needed to sustain the change that our students deserve? Because organizations are made up of people, successful change happens at that individual level, right? So that's that ADKAR methodology. And our people managers are really the preferred senders and the heroes of change. So Clark, right? I didn't use this acronym. I forgot, but I'm going to use it now. I like to say that y'all are the heroes of change. And if y'all can remember a famous superhero with the first name of Clark, that's right, Clark Kent, Superman. That helps that particular acronym, as you all are the heroes of change. And last but not least, themselves for change before leading their people through change. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. So let's reflect. I would like for you to journal. What was an aha moment for you? What was a light bulb that came on? Was there anything that you disagreed with or would like to discuss? Which of your strengths makes you uniquely talented to lead change management efforts? And then last but not least, what would you like to learn more about? So those are some reflection questions. And if time allows, Emily, I'd love for you to leave these up on the screen so that folks can journal, or you can have an active conversation about whatever works best for the time. I want to say thank you so much. I wish I could be there with you, but I want to say thank you in advance for being amazing agents of change and for working so closely with your teams and helping shape the culture that is needed for change to be successful. Till next time, and please, I'm happy to talk with you about this anytime.